If there was any doubt about Pokemon coming to the Nintendo Switch in 2018, I hope to settle that within this video and let you know that Pokemon on the Nintendo Switch must release next year. What's going on, it's Cyroth here, bringing you a new Nintendo video where I talk to you guys about Pokemon coming to the Switch. A game that's already confirmed. It was confirmed back at E3 to be coming to the system, but some people seem to have some doubts about whether or not it'll release next year. I see this a lot with Metroid Prime 4, and a lot of it I don't understand because Nintendo has been known as a company that doesn't delay its games too often. One of the more prominently delayed games for Nintendo systems was Breath of the Wild. Although that is an odd exception to what has normally been a steady release schedule of Nintendo games. Nintendo normally just announces a game and then the year after or wherever it's projected, it'll come out. However, because of the lack of projections for Metroid Prime 4 and the new Pokemon game coming to the Nintendo Switch, people are starting to speculate that they'll be coming out in 2019 or further. And while this may be the case for Metroid, it is certainly not the case for Pokemon. I am 100% sure that Pokemon will be coming to the Switch in 2018. But why do I think this? Well, let's start with the E3 press conference. He says that a new core RPG Pokemon title will be coming to the Switch, and it may not release for more than a year, but I hope you look forward to it all the same. Now, because it may not release for more than a year from E3 is still in 2018, and it lines up perfectly with the holiday season. So you can't really use the wording from that E3 press conference to argue that Pokemon's going to be coming to the Switch in 2019. It may even come around E3 time next year, although I doubt that because recently Pokemon has been focusing mainly on a holiday release schedule. Pokemon's a very popular series, and it's the main driver for sales on the Nintendo 3DS, and now that Pokemon's abandoning ship from the 3DS to the Nintendo Switch, it could be a good holiday driver for that system as well. But speaking of sales, that leads into my second point in this video, one that I feel is much stronger than the first one, and that is Nintendo's projected sales numbers for the Nintendo Switch in 2018. Now, we don't necessarily know the projected sales numbers, however, we do know how many units of the Nintendo Switch that Nintendo estimates to ship in 2018, and that's around 25 to 30 million. Now, we've known that the Nintendo Switch has been selling like hotcakes. It's a very popular system, but for them to predict that high of a number of systems to sell in 1 year is absolutely insane. And you know what that means? It means it's gonna need a big game to drive all of the sales. And with all due respect, it's not Metroid, okay? Metroid historically hasn't sold the greatest, and while they may be great games, they're not great drivers for sales. But you know what is a great driver for sales? Pokemon. Look, Nintendo's already used their main franchise, Super Mario, their biggest one on the Nintendo Switch. They've already used their third biggest franchise in The Legend of Zelda. What's left? Their second biggest franchise, and that is Pokemon. Pokemon has made its name known on the Nintendo 3DS. It's its home there. All of the Pokemon fans left from the Nintendo DS to the 3DS, and that's what drove a lot of the around 60 million Nintendo 3DSs sold. And Pokemon games are continuing to sell even better. Not Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, because it's basically Sun and Moon just Ultra. But every new generation of Pokemon recently is starting to sell more and more, and it's an upward incline that I think could increase if Nintendo is good enough at getting the Pokemon fan base to move from the 3DS and finally make the Switch. It's a big step for Pokemon to move to HD, but I think they're going to have to if Nintendo wants to meet these sales figures that they're estimating for next year. The Nintendo Switch continues to sell out, and if Nintendo wants to continue this pattern and create more value for their systems by having them continually sell out, they're gonna have to be close to matching this shipping number. They don't want the stores to be filled with more Nintendo Switches than they need. They at least need a lot of these to sell. And yeah, well, a new 3D Mario game is gonna do that. We just got one, so you can't just use a Super Mario Odyssey 2 as the main driver for sales. Yeah, it's gonna do well like Galaxy 2 did well because it's piggybacking on the success of Galaxy 1. If they want a new 3D Mario game to piggyback off of the success of Odyssey, I'm sure it'll still do well. But it's not gonna get these millions of people to go out and purchase a Nintendo Switch. But what will is a new Pokemon game because the Pokemon community is a very active community and they're so passionate about their favorite game series, and I love the Pokemon games personally, so it would be great to see Pokemon make the switch to HD. And in a similar way to how Pokemon X and Y really sort of innovated the Pokemon series by making it 3D, this is going to finally innovate the Pokemon series to the point where it's an HD game. Many people went out and bought Pokemon X and Y specifically for the 3D graphics. They probably wouldn't have bought X and Y if it was just a regular Pokemon game with the same basic sort of premise of its art style, like Pokemon Sun and Moon is being to Pokemon X and Y's art style. It's still a similar 3D art style. Yeah, they changed up the models a little bit. Yeah, whatever. It's not too big of a change. But a big graphical change on the Nintendo Switch will certainly be a driver for people who maybe don't even consider themselves Pokemon fans, but are like, oh, okay, I sense a reboot coming to the Pokemon series here. Maybe I'll go and buy this game on the Switch and see how it is. And you know what? They end up liking it. They become a fan of the Pokemon series. It just creates more fans overall. But on that topic of innovation, I think that Pokemon on the Nintendo Switch really needs to innovate, not just in the graphical style, but also in the style of gameplay itself, making it more open world-esque. I talked about in a recent video how Super Mario Odyssey is forever gonna change the way games are made on Nintendo Switch. Now, there's lots of games that are just regular old games on the Nintendo Switch that don't have an abundance of content within them. You know, ARMS is an example of this. It's a fighting game, and it has some single-player content within it, but the bulk of the game is just playing matches over and over, and that's fine. ARMS isn't a game series necessarily designed to immerse you in the overall experience. It's made for a couple of quick matches, and that's it. Similar way to Splatoon 2 and so on. But games like Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it's setting up a pattern for Nintendo taking these franchises and making them larger. Now, I know that Xenoblade Chronicles was already a large franchise, but the fact that Nintendo is including it in its roster of games this year is trying to send a message to fans saying that, hey, we're making our games much bigger this year. Now, Breath of the Wild is pretty much entirely open world. Odyssey plops you into individual worlds, but they're still much bigger than any of the Mario series pasts, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is filled with huge worlds as well. So if Pokemon wants to do the same thing, I think it'll continue the pattern, and it'll just show how games are evolving on the Nintendo Switch. Just imagine trainers throwing out their Pokemon, no battle transitions, no location transitions, none of that. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon lag a lot because of Pokemon trying to increase the graphical capabilities, but they're just hindered because the 3DS has a glass ceiling on it that you just can't break because the hardware is limited. But the Nintendo Switch is going to get the job done if you want to push the graphics a little bit. You won't have to have the continual transitions for mapping anymore because you'll be able to design maps big enough within the game that you don't have to make them smaller spaces to begin with. That's the advantage of Pokemon putting their series on the Nintendo Switch, and it's going to show fans that it's going to innovate in that way in 2018 in a graphical sense. Trainers are just going to send out their Pokemon and there's no battle transitions. There's no map transitions. You don't have to worry about the continual lag anymore. And if Pokemon sends that message in 2018, it's not just going to send the message to the rest of the development teams at Nintendo to make their first-party franchises more open-world style, but it's also going to send a big message to all of the third-party developers developing for the Nintendo Switch. That's going to tell them, hey, it's time to put our big games on this system because this is what Nintendo is looking for, games with a ton of content within them. Now, if you want to learn more about how games are changing on the Nintendo Switch and becoming more open world, I recommend checking out my video on how Super Mario Odyssey is forever changing Switch games, and also check out my previous live stream where I predict all of the major Switch releases for 2018, including some more of my in-depth thoughts on Pokemon coming to the Nintendo Switch. Have a good one. See ya.